Hey everyone, today we are taking a look at Springseek or S.Coronis. If you are a new S.Coronis owner and you are not sure where she fits, her best role right now is as a support in Nasuna and Jiri Mark team, basically replacing Tilia. She does look like she has DPS potential, and we will talk about that later, but at the moment, her damage isn't good enough to justify taking DPS potentials over support potentials. So in this video, I focus on how this team works, why S.Coronis fits here, how to play the team, and how to build her as a support. If her DPS build becomes viable in the future, I will cover that in another video. Just a quick recap for anyone new to Terra Mark team. In the Mark team, there is one character applying marks, usually by a support or versatile role, and then another character triggers those marks to deal damage, which is Jiri in this case. So Jiri is the main DPS here. For Nasuna, she normally handles mark application and also provides buff and debuffs, while Tilia is here to handle damage amplification. This is where S.Coronis comes in. For S.Coronis, she takes over mark application duty from Nasuna and also provides damage amplification similar to Tilia. So instead of relying on Nasuna to do most of the marking and Tilia on amplifying damage, S.Coronis actually combines both of them together into one character. This frees Nasuna up to focus more on buff and debuffs, and it also makes the team much more easier to play, because you are no longer relying on Nasuna to constantly reapply marks through normal attacks. For gameplay-wise, this team is quite straightforward. At the start of the fight, use Nasuna's skill and S.Coronis' skill at the same time to set up buff and debuff and mark applications. The reason is both of them take a short moment to fully activate. So after that, follow up with Jiri's skills about 1 second later to trigger the marks. And after that, just use that skill whenever they are off cooldown. But make sure that you have to cast S.Coronis' skill 1 second earlier than Jiri's skill. If you played Tilia version of this team before, this will feel almost identical. If anything, it's actually easier. Before talking about build, it's important to understand the role of S.Coronis. In this team, S.Coronis is not a DPS. Her role here is to maintain mark uptime and amplify Jiri's damage. Because of that, we prioritize her utility and intentionally avoid potentials that push her toward personal damage. Let's go over the important potentials for this build. I won't go through every single one of them here. You can just follow the build on the screen. But there are a few key ones that are worth pointing out. For Nasuna, Touch of Nature is a staple for Terra Mark teams. This potential significantly amplifies mark damage, especially when combined with Jiri's Emblems, which I will talk about that later. For S.Coronis, the most important thing here is Rose Field uptime. Because of that, lasting aftertaste is basically mandatory. It extends her field duration and makes her much more reliable as a support. So as long as her field stays up, she is pretty much doing her job. Another important potential here is Terra Chorus. Functionally, it does the same job as Tilia Binding Beam. It increases mark damage taken, which directly boosts Jiri's damage. This is one of the main reasons why S.Coronis can replace Tilia in this team, while still keeping a similar performance. Note that even though S.Coronis is a support in this team, it is still okay to take reciprocity for her personal damage. When S.Coronis is properly built, this potential can be a better choice than Lingering Grace for overall team damage, even though the gain is only few percentage. but that's the limit of her DPS in this team. If you take even one more DPS pot, it will start hurting total team damage. And if S.Coronis isn't built properly, it is better to skip this potential and just take Wrinkling Grace instead. For Jiri, Hexa Calamity Famine is quite important since it adds one extra mark trigger for Jiri, but you only need this at level 1, no need to upgrade it any further. For Curtain Call, it also does the same thing as Hexa Calamity Famine. It adds another mark trigger. However, if you want more consistency, you can replace this with Deeper into Sin, because this potential increases Jiri's skill radius, making it easier to trigger mark reliably. The trade-off is that you lose one mark proc from Curtain Call, so the damage ceiling is slightly lower. But in practice, it can be worth it, especially in fights where enemies move around. Other than that, you can just copy the build on the screen. Before moving on to this and Emblem, let's take a quick look at skill priorities. For Nasuna, you only need to level her main skill, as her buff and debuff scale with level. After that, you can upgrade her ultimate if you want more attack buff. For S.Coronis, you can skip everything entirely for a support build. But if you want to invest into her personal damage, then prioritize support skill, then ultimate. Otherwise, skill levels are not required for her to function in this team. For Jiri, there is no need to level her skill at all, because mark damage doesn't scale with skill level, so upgrading her skill doesn't increase her main source of damage. Now for the diss option in this team. Since Jiri is the main DPS here, your main diss should always be something that benefits her, not S.Coronis. In terms of priority, Claw the Claw or Nasuna's signature diss is the best option for this team, and the rest are as shown on the screen. You can use whichever you have available. But note that Sweet Times or FE diss is only viable as main diss. It shouldn't be used as a support diss. For S.Coronis' signature diss and her event diss, they are both designed for her DPS build, but they don't provide any meaningful value to Jiri, who is the main DPS in this team. Because of that, they should actually go in support slots once your main discs are already filled. But in case that you don't have enough main discs, it is completely fine to use them in a main slot. So this means that you actually don't need to pull her signature disc right now, since that is designed for her DPS build, which isn't viable at the moment. This could change in the future, but for now, there is no need to pull that. Now let's talk about emblems. Since Jiri does the most damage, the emblem priorities will mainly focus on amplifying her DPS. Starting with Nasuna, the most important thing is Touch of Nature, as it increases mark damage by 34%. After that, the rest isn't that important, but you can take main skill for another 7% damage increase, and also charge efficiency in case that you want more of her ultimate. For S.Coronis, the top priority is Terra Chorus, which gives about 31% damage increase, and that's basically all you need from her emblem for this team, since the rest don't really do much. Now for Jiri, this is where emblems matter the most. There is one important thing that you need to understand. The mark damage from Nasuna's Touch of Nature and any other sources of mark damage, they don't add up together, they actually multiply. This makes mark damage on Jiri's emblems extremely valuable. Because of this, getting even one 80% mark damage on her emblem gives a straight 80% damage increase. So having 80% mark damage on all three emblems is mandatory. You need to roll for them. After that, the next priority is a Rainbow Pen, which gives about 23% damage increase, and then Twilight Verdict for another 17% damage increase. Then the rest are just as shown on the screen. Just to be clear again, for this team, S.Coronis' personal damage doesn't matter much, so you don't need to roll emblems for that. However, if you want to build her damage anyway, you can follow the list on the screen. But again, this is completely optional and not required for the support build. So who is better between S.Coronis and Tilia? In a neutral environment, Tilia is actually slightly stronger. But in this BB that favors support damage, S.Coronis can be slightly better, although the difference isn't that huge. The real advantage of S.Coronis is that she makes mark application much easier compared to relying on Nasuna, which makes Terra mark team a lot easier to play. On top of that, she also frees Tilia for other teams. So having S.Coronis on your account will give you more flexibility in team building. A lot of people will ask about DPS S.Coronis, either because they don't have Nasuna or Jiri, or simply because they just want to play her as a DPS. Her kit definitely looks like she can be a DPS, but right now, the gap between her DPS build and her support value in this team is quite large. So support S.Coronis is simply much more impactful at the moment. That said, DPS testing is still ongoing. If a proper DPS build becomes viable in the future, I will cover that in another separate video. So to sum it up, S.Coronis is best played as support right now. She works extremely well in Nasuna and Jiri mark teams. She actually performs similar to Tilia, with some situational advantage, and she gives you much more flexibility in team building. If you are interested in her DPS build, let me know. Thanks for watching and see you again in next video.